Welcome back to AICE International History Review, Section 1.2. What impact did imperial expansion have on international relations? This section is mainly going to talk about how each country that was imperializing was impacted by their own imperialism along with other countries' imperial efforts. Imperial expansion is going to create a lot of competition. For example, the scramble for Africa. This could lead to a lot of tensions, which cause countries to be on the brink of war, but not actually fight. They could actually fight. It could also lead to cooperation between countries to actually accomplish their imperial goals, so we could see them work together. Starting off with potentially bad incidents. The Fashoda incident. Fashoda, Britain and France, they're attempting to imperialize Africa in the same place at the same time. This is Fashoda. Fashoda is a village in Sudan where Britain and France ran into each other while again trying to imperialize. Both countries actually claimed Sudan. Both nations almost declared war against each other, but they wound up actually compromising to avoid conflict. And then in this compromise, France recognized British control of Egypt and also Sudan, and Britain recognized France's claims in Morocco. And we'll talk more about French-Morocco later. But this almost led to conflict. And I say almost because it almost did. Both countries were almost really ready to declare war, fight over this place in Africa, but war was averted. Conflict was averted. They did not fight. They actually wound up compromising. And Fashoda incident, this is in 1898. Now, a couple years later, Britain and France, they form what is known as Entente Cordiale. Entente Cordiale, Britain was the most powerful navy in the world. France, they had their own gripes with Britain, and what winds up happening is France realizes that working together with Britain to imperialize is in their best interest because, well, effectively, having an ally is going to give them protection. However, it's not even just Britain and France at this point that are imperializing. They're not just the only Europeans. For Entente Cordiale, it's going to serve as a British and French front against a new imperial power of Germany. Britain and France, again, they're not the only ones on the scoreboard at this point. Germany, having unified in the 1870s, they are looking to make their mark, and what they want to do is they are starting to seek their place in the sun. After the Franco-Prussian War, France against Prussia and Germany, France lost, all right? And this is going to be the start of France's really poor relations with Germany. But anyway, Germany is going to unify, and they're kind of late to the game, but Kaiser Wilhelm, he's going to be their ruler. Kaiser Wilhelm is going to start taking Germany on imperial expansion after adopting what he called Weltpolitik. This is their new foreign policy, and what they're going to do is, again, they're going to try to seek their place in the sun. And what this means is that they're just going to try to become an influential power, just like other Europeans who are already ahead of them, like Britain, like France. But again, they're going to go try to imperialize and set up colonies now too. So they're going to start building up their navy, but the government really doesn't want to actually go and imperialize. They were too new, they were too weak, they were too fragile. However, the wealthy businessmen of the country, the wealthy entrepreneurs, the ones who are funding industrialization as well, they want to take advantage of imperial opportunities in other countries, and Wilhelm sees Entente Cordiale as a threat to German imperialism. So eventually they are just going to go out and begin imperializing in a couple different places, and we'll talk about how. But Germany is going to constantly, and maybe sometimes intentionally, run into other imperial powers. For example, Algeciras. This is also sometimes called the First Moroccan Crisis. This is one of the first real examples of Germany being a constant provocateur against Britain and France in Entente Cordiale. But British and French imperialism, again, had taken them to Africa, and now Germany is going to be imperializing. They are also going to be looking at Africa as well. So a couple of things to look at, again, during the First Moroccan Crisis. 1905, Kaiser Wilhelm, he is going to give a speech in Morocco, encouraging Moroccan independence from France, because remember, we just talked about how Britain recognized Moroccan influence in France. So this speech is going to be given in a place called Tangiers, and this is going to lead to the Tangiers crisis. Germany was directly challenging French control of Morocco. Wilhelm hoped that this is going to undermine French imperialism in an effort to assert Germany's own dominance. He also thought it would undermine the relationship between France and Britain, but it really doesn't work out well. It, in fact, kind of makes relations worse between the Entente Cordiale, Britain and France, and against Germany. Other crises, Agadir crisis, also sometimes called the Second Moroccan Crisis. 1911, Kaiser Wilhelm is back, and he sends the German gunboat, the Panther, to Agadir. Again, this is an attempt to undermine French imperialism in Morocco, and again, also trying to undermine the relationship between France and Britain, because the goal is Germany wants Britain to side with Germany, because if they side with Germany, this would kind of give them some legitimacy, and also this would help their fight against France and the French influence in Africa, and also, again, help them seek their place in the sun and one-up France. this bigly backfires. Britain winds up backing France instead of Germany, and again, relationships between Germany and Britain, Germany and France, Entente Cordiale and Germany, they get worse. Now, Wilhelm, he constantly tries to undermine this British and French front to imperialize Africa, but it backfires pretty much every single time. He tries to drive this wedge between Britain and France, but Britain keeps backing France, so relationships are only going to get worse between the Entente, again, Britain and France, and Germany. Now, staying with Africa, onto a different conflict, the Boer Wars. Britain is going to be interested in an area of South Africa known as the Transvaal and the Free Orange State. These areas, they are rich in minerals and resources, so the British, they go and they set up shop. Remember, they had actually set up a port in South Africa near Cape Colony. They go from there and move inland towards the Transvaal and the Free Orange State because they think that they can gain more resources, and imperializing further would obviously give them benefit. The leader of the Transvaal, his name is Paul Kruger. He is not going to appreciate this. He's going to deny rights to British settlers and demands independence from Britain, and this is going to effectively start the Boer Wars. So Britain's going to take the offensive really quick, and they're going to hash a plan to try to overthrow the government of the Transvaal and install a much more pro-British friendly government. This is going to be led by Cecil Rhodes. This event is known as the Jameson Raid. This miserably fails. The British, they fight an army led by the Boers. These are South Africans. They're kind of Dutch descendants who settled in South Africa. But this army of Boers, who are effectively farmers, Boer, I'm pretty sure is just a Dutch word for farmer, these poorly equipped farmers, they're going to drive out the British. By all accounts, the British should have won this one. They were superior in pretty much almost every way. However, they really just weren't prepared for war. They were very much underestimating the Boers, so the Boers are actually going to beat them in this case. Kaiser Wilhelm, being an absolute menace, and also a constant provocateur, he's going to send a telegram to Paul Kruger, the leader of the Transvaal and the Free Orange State, congratulating him for beating the British. And the sole purpose of this is just to kind of poke Britain with a stick. Again, Kaiser Wilhelm's a constant provocateur, and he pretty much everything he's doing at this rate is pretty much just an attempt to provoke either France or Britain and get under their skin a little bit. So anyway, the Boer Wars, they're going to go on. The Boers are going to put up a decent fight against the British by, again, who all accounts are superior in pretty much every single way, but the Brits are going to have a hard time beating them. Again, they very much underestimate the Boers. They do not expect them to put up a good fight. However, another reason why Britain is not really thinking too much of them is that they don't really think they're too advanced, and realistically they're not. However, once they go and start fighting them, they find out that Germany was actually now helping the Boers by providing them with weapons. So when Britain starts fighting a bunch of farmers armed with German guns, this is going to make it a little bit harder than they thought when originally they believed that these literal farmers are not going to be too well equipped. This is going to be one of several reasons why Britain kind of has a tough time winning the Boer Wars. Again, they underestimate them. The Boers are supplied with German weapons. Another reason is public opinion. Public opinion is going to be very anti-British, and Britain is going to be just absolutely brutal towards the Boers. They're going to have extremely brutal tactics. They're going to pretty much burn anything in their path, crops, people, towns. They're also going to put the Boers in concentration camps, and public opinion is going to be really, really, really harsh against the Brits once people actually find out what's going on during the Boer Wars and the extent to which they're going to actually win, since they had such a tough time winning in the beginning. So the British, they run into a good amount of trouble beating the Boers, but eventually they do. Imperialism is going to create a lot of conflict in this case, but this is a failed attempt to drive British influence and imperialism out of South Africa by the Boers. Britain takes over, and there you go. On to Asia real quick, and then I'll come back to something that's kind of both Asia and Africa related. Moving over to Asia, speaking of attempts to drive out foreign influence, the Boxer Rebellion. This is going to take us over to China. China is very unmodernized to start off with, not open to Western culture. They kind of traded plenty due to the Silk Road going all the way back, but modernization had pretty much been occurring everywhere else. Now, imperialism is going to start in China in the earlier 1800s. The British, they're going to bring huge quantities of opium drugs into China. And this had been an attempt to gain influence. And to try to deter this influence, China is going to fight Britain in the Opium Wars. China's going to wind up losing horribly, easily defeated by Britain's superior navy. Remember the two-power standard, also competition between building up naval forces. But anyway, they're forced to sign what are called as the unequal treaties. And they're exactly what they sound like. They are a series of treaties that are inherently unequal and very much favor Britain. So Britain is going to get possession of Hong Kong. It's an island off the mainland of China. China is going to try to get rid of British influence again years later, but again, still fail miserably when Britain, and also with the help of France, are going to beat the Chinese. Now from there, the floodgates are pretty much going to open to Western influence, and really, this is going to undermine Chinese independence and also culture. Now, China, again, they can't really do anything since every other country is superior in almost every way they could possibly be in terms of modernization. China, they were unmodernized, they were unindustrialized, they did not go through any of this like other countries had. So other countries, they were miles ahead in terms of advancement in technology and military power, thanks to, again, industrialization, which, again, just did not hit China yet. Other European countries are going to come in and take advantage of the situation in China. For example, Britain's already there. France helps defeat China in the Second Opium War. Germany's going to come in. Italy's going to come in. Even Russia is going to come in as well. This is going to be one of the first times that we're kind of talking about non-European nations imperializing a bit too. Japan, their next door neighbor, is going to come over and imperialize China, and we'll talk about Japan later on. But the USA is also going to be coming in. The USA is kind of just beginning their own imperialist journey. They're going to come in as well. Now, all of these nations, they are going to be trying to get a slice of China, grow their influence. That growing foreign influence in China, well, is hated by the Chinese. The Chinese are very traditional. They did not want this Western influence. This is going to lead to the Boxer Rebellion. The Boxer Rebellion is just a rebellion against foreign influence in China. Foreign influence had been building up for a while, and the government, they can't resist it because they're really inferior to the Western nations. The Qing dynasty had no interest in westernizing, and also once China became imperialized, the Qing dynasty, the Manchu, they really had no idea how to combat it, so they kind of just sat back and let it happen. The Chinese people hated it. The government didn't really do anything to fight it, so eventually the people are going to rebel against it. And again, this brings us to the Boxer Rebellion. This rebellion, it is against the foreign influence that is brought upon by all of these countries trying to imperialize China. It was also going to be put down by all the nations that are trying to imperialize China. Together, they put down this rebellion. They actually are going to cooperate in order to imperialize. So all the countries that were imperializing China, trying to get a slice, they are going to work together to put down the Boxer Rebellion and then wind up charging China to put down this rebellion, which is going to be one of the plenty of reasons why the Manchu were eventually booted. Regardless, this conflict is put down, and to keep future conflict away, the open door policy is established. Now, the open door policy has nothing to do with stopping the Chinese from fighting the imperial powers. What it's doing is trying to prevent the imperial powers from fighting over China. The open door policy says that all imperial nations who want to can enjoy equal trade with China. These imperial powers, they could cooperate rather than start a conflict, kind of like they just did. So the influence of imperial powers, they are going to grow since the Chinese government can't resist it. Now, a common question, whose fault is the Boxer Rebellion? Well, there's plenty of different places you could put the blame. Could it be the government's fault for allowing this to happen, even though they really had no way to resist it? The Manchu had no interest in westernizing, they had no interest in modernizing, so imperialism was kind of inevitable. China just sat there and let it happen. They couldn't fight it, they had no way to, and if they would have, they lost, which they did in the Boxer Rebellion. Was it the fault of the imperial nations? Well, for imperializing, well, obviously they went to China, they were imperializing China, so could it be theirs? What is the fault of the Chinese for rebelling in the Boxer Rebellion, which only made treatment worse and more imperialism with the open door policy? This is an obvious example to cooperate and imperialize it. This isn't the only one. Going back to Africa, 1885, you had the Berlin Conference. Berlin Conference is set up to figure out how to imperialize Africa. The Treaty of Berlin that comes from the Berlin Conference is again attempting to regulate imperialism in Africa. What it does is it divvies up Africa for European imperialist nations, and any country who signed on had agreed to settle disputes by negotiation rather than war. You saw this example with Fashoda. Britain and France, they were attempting to imperialize in the same place at the same time. Conflict almost breaks out, but they settle rather than going to war. So the Treaty of Berlin is going to divvy up Africa for imperialism. There's going to be a lot of different reasons that this treaty is entered into, but for one, again, it's meant to help create some cooperation rather than conflict. Also, other justifications for the Treaty of Berlin. It's going to formally abolish the use of slavery, even though it's mostly outlawed at this point already. It's kind of a facade so that they can say, look at all the benefit we're bringing. We're outlawing slavery, the place where it's sourced from. They also say that it's bringing technology, education, innovation, medicines, groups of nations, again, working together to imperialize. This is the goal here. Rather than have conflict, we want to work together. We're also going to see other subsets of groups coming from this. We had the Entente Cordiale with Britain and France. We're now also going to see the triple intervention. This is Germany, this is France, this is Russia, and they work together in order to, again, achieve some cooperation in imperializing. Going back to Asia real quick, the triple intervention is going to intervene in Japan after the Sino-Japanese War. Sino-Japanese War is the first war between China and Japan. It's going to end in the Treaty of Shimonoseki in 1895. It's going to be administered by Japan over China in the Triple Intervention. They're going to oversee this treaty. Russia's going to join to try to get a warm water port in Port Arthur and expand trade into Asia. Russia believes that the Treaty of Shimonoseki is going to create instability in China, which it eventually does. But France is also going to join the Triple Intervention so that they weren't isolated from everyone else. Germany is going to join the Triple Intervention so that Russia would support Germany's imperialism, because again, Germany as a newfound country is trying to get as much support as they can to seek that place in the sun. Japan's going to wind up giving up Port Arthur to Russia since it really couldn't compete with the military of the Triple Intervention, although they were able to easily go and run over China because of how unmodernized they were. But more about Japan in the third section of the chapter. For now, the Triple Intervention is just going to interfere with Japan's administering of the Treaty of Shimonoseki because they did not want Japan to get in the way of their own imperial gains. Japan was getting a little bit too powerful. They modernized really quickly. We'll talk about Japan's modernization in the next section, but the Triple Intervention did not want Japan getting too powerful for their liking, so they are going to intervene. That's kind of it for this section. So what impacts did imperial expansion have on international relationships? Well, it created some cooperation. You see some countries working together in order to imperialize, cooperating rather than conflict. We had the Entente Cordiale. We had, that's Britain and France. We also have the open door policy. That's European nations. That's Japan. That's the US working together to achieve imperialism in China. Every country gets an equal amount of trade. Triple intervention. Germany, France, Russia working together to imperialize, intervening after the Sino-Japanese War. You also have conflicts and tensions. For example, the Boer Wars. Britain fighting the Boers. Boers are just lowly farmers who kind of put up a fight in the beginning, but given the British kind of get harsh against them, public opinion turns against them, but this is going to create conflict. This is also going to create tension. Public opinion is really poor too. Germany was a constant provocateur towards Britain and France. Remember Entente Cordiale, especially in Morocco with Moroccan crisis, Agadir. Opium Wars. Britain trying to intervene in China, also eventually more countries trying to intervene in China, leading foreign influence to grow to the point where the Chinese rebel in the Boxer Rebellion. Again, imperial expansion is going to create cooperation, and it's also going to create conflict and tension.